Hey, welcome back everybody, and thanks for being here. I appreciate y'all showing up. I think we're going to do something a little different today. This motor has been sitting here in the background for a while now, but this bus needs to get back on the road. This is a 1976 bus, bicentennial bus. Next year is what is known as our, let me make sure I get this right, semi-quincentennial, the 250th anniversary of our country. So it only makes sense to have the bicentennial bus back on the road and using it regularly. Not to mention, I've said it before, we got this bus so my family could go camping together, and my family has outgrown this bus already, but that doesn't mean we're not going to use it. Anyway, motor refresh. Not motor rebuild, motor refresh. The motor that was in this, no good. It's got some issues that we need to address. I had this other 2-liter sitting around. We're going to freshen it up, put it back together with its original parts, making them better along the way, fingers crossed, and hope we get a decent runner out of it so I can take the time to rebuild the original 2-liter for this bus. Let me get you in a little bit closer, show you what we're talking about. I posted a short a while back, a long while back maybe now it seems. Anyway, I had this stripped down to this short block and we did an intense cleaning on it. And it turned out okay. Still needs some love in some spots. These things, you know how they get when they start leaking oil. Anyway, the short block is cleaned up, and those keen observers will notice it's upside down right now. After I cleaned it, it started to get a little bit hard to turn. I might have gotten a little too much oil washed out of it. Anyway, what I've been doing is turned it upside down and putting oil in the pickup tube, and then manually cranking the motor out here, getting it to spin over and suck that oil down. Anyway, it's loosened back up. All good, not worried. But here we are, sitting upside down. Let's get into some tips about how to refresh your motor. Now, before we go much further, I feel like I should probably go ahead and address this. Not all motors are worthy of being refreshed. Quite a few of them are just ready to be rebuilt. I feel like I came into this hobby on the tail end of when you could still find decent running motors, you know, something cheap to throw in your project to get it on the road. A lot of those are gone now, and I just happen to have this motor here, and I have some experience from over the years of nursing motors along. Like I said, this isn't a long-term solution for this bus. This is rather just a motor to go in here while I rebuild the original motor and get it back in there. Rebuild it, do it right. This is a Band-Aid. Let's be real honest. It might be a good Band-Aid. It might definitely do the job, but it's still just a Band-Aid. So I don't want anybody thinking that I'm telling you can just take a motor and throw some fresh seals at it and make it beautiful. But if you have a motor and it's running okay, but it's leaking some oil and maybe you're down on compression, these might be some tricks that could help you get a little bit more life out of that motor. But the reality is, most motors at this point are in need of a rebuild. Just wanted to get that out there. So now that we got that cleared up, I just want to say, you got to do what's right for you on your motor. This is what I'm choosing to do for my situation. I'm not telling anybody to refurb their motor. I'm just telling you what's working for me right now. Maybe it'll work for you. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. So, pistons and cylinders, that's where we're going to start at. I'm in a situation right here where I'm going to reuse my pistons and cylinders that came off the motor. You have the option of buying new pistons and cylinders. When it comes to a Type 4 build, they're more expensive than Type 1. If this is a Type 1 build, you might consider, if your bottom end is in good shape, to just put new pistons and cylinders on it. I'm going to put in the work and reuse my pistons and cylinders that came off this to save a little bit of money. Again, because this isn't my final build. This is simply a Band-Aid build. The tolerances have been checked. These pistons and cylinders are going to work just fine with a brand new set of rings on them. But before we put rings on, there's a few other things we need to do to make sure that it's ready to go. All right, let's talk about our pistons. This is where those rings I mentioned are going to come in a little bit later. But first of all, when you pull this piston out of your motor, it's going to have a lot of carbon buildup here on the top. There's lots of ways to clean that off. I use a wire brush on a bench grinder. Gets a lot of it flaked away. Some of it's really built up and strong on there. You have a hard time doing it. Anyway, these could also probably be dropped in your ultrasonic cleaner, and that might be a good idea because there's plenty of deposits on the inside too from years of people probably not doing maybe the best maintenance to these motors. They're going to get filthy anyway, but we all know these motors got neglected. You have oil passages in this bottom ring here too that you got to make sure are clean and clear. So if you have an ultrasonic, not a bad idea to give them a soak. Otherwise, spend some time, make sure you can see that light through those oil passages. Get them as clean as you can. That's going to be beneficial. You want to look for any sharp edges, anywhere it might be damaged. Like I said, I've checked these over. They're in pretty good shape. If in fact you've got a rough edge somewhere where it's gotten nicked, you could take a little file to it. You don't want to take away a ton of material. You want to take away the imperfection. But I also had a mechanic teach me years ago. You can take your old ring. He'd actually get a ring and snap it in half. And you could use that ring. It's got a sharp edge on it. And he would clean it out, the grooves in there for the top and the middle ring. So getting them clean is the key, guys. Getting them clean. The next thing you're going to run into is your piston pin for your connecting rod right there. Usually you'll see that they show signs of wear and everything on them. You want to polish that thing up. I like to use emery cloth on them. You could also use a Scotch-Brite, just depending on their condition. But you want it to be able to fit through the piston pinhole nice and easy. You know, not resistance. You shouldn't have to hammer them in. My goodness. A little bit of oil and this thing should slip through there. When these came off, this motor had been sitting a little bit. No one taught me this. I came up with this on my own, so it could be an awful idea. But I used an old 2-paddle brake hone to go in here and mildly clean it up. And then of course, sorry for my dirty rags, this isn't final assembly. Clean it out. I got that done. Check for any imperfections. Clean is key when you're doing this, guys. Keep them always clean. And then an oiled pin ought to slide in there and be able to pass through. Gonna make me look foolish on camera. No, this is good. This one's fine. It passes through. It does what it needs to do. It's a little stiff going back that one way. It's a used set of piston cylinders. If it rotates in there, especially when it's in its resting position, you're in good shape in my opinion. Again, my opinion, guys. Opinion. But get them cleaned up, get that passing through there real good, and then these are going to be close to ready for new piston rings. Now, what goes great with a refurbed piston? Nothing's finer than a refurbed cylinder. Again, like I said, I've checked these for spec. They come out all right. They definitely did have some imperfections in the cylinder from this thing sitting for a while in use and whatnot. It's like we got the top ridge right there. You can kind of feel it. It's where the top ring would have maxed out probably. But they cleaned up all right. And how they cleaned up? With this here cylinder hone, 3-puck cylinder hone. This is how I was taught to do this. There's other ways of doing it. There's ball hones. I don't know. I know those 2 hones. I'm sorry. There's other ways of doing it though. Anyway, this is what I do. You want to make sure they're clean, which they're not right now. You want to make sure they're clean. You want to oil slightly your clean cylinder, and you insert this in here on a drill and start the rotation. What you're looking for is to get the crosshatch in there. Actually, what you're looking for first is to get any imperfections out of there. Any rust, any ridges, anything that might be there, you want that gone. And then you're trying to eventually create a crosshatch in there again. That crosshatch is important for the oiling of the cylinder when everything's in motion. So, if you're going to do this on your own, you need to invest in a cylinder hone. Like I said, much like with the pistons and the cleanup process, on this process, clean is key. Have some brake cleaner or something around to clean your stones. Clean your cylinder, apply fresh oil, hone again. Clean rags, keep it going. Once you have a finished product you're happy with, apply some fresh, clean oil to the inside of it to keep that cylinder wall from rusting up. Hopefully it won't be too long before it's going back on your motor, but you're also going to want it oiled when you go to put your piston back in with those fresh rings. I didn't mention it previously, but if you've got a big enough ultrasonic, you could probably drop these cylinders down in here too. A lot of them, again, from leaking over the years, you've got some buildup on the fins. You could also clean that with brake cleaner and a wire brush and whatever, but up to you. Again, clean, guys. Clean is the key. We're assembling a Band-Aid motor out of used parts. Let's at least make it clean. So, moving on with our pistons, one of the other things you need to do, this is Type 4 specific. When you get those heads off, if there's a ring in here, a sealing ring, get that thing out of here. Volkswagen even told you to do that. They put them in, then decided they were a bad idea. Get them gone. But once they're gone, what you're going to want to do is get some lapping compound and lap the cylinder specific to where it belongs on the engine, in the head. Lap the cylinder, get it in there. Make sure it's seating and sealing up as nice as it can. Okay? Do all that, and then you're going to have to clean that up again. You got to get that lapping compound off there. Clean, guys. Clean is the magic word of the day. But that's the last thing you'll have to do with your cylinders. Once they're lapped into the head for their specific chamber, you're in good shape, and we're moving on to the heads. This is not a head from the motor I'm building. This is a head that I had sitting over there, but it's already partially disassembled, so I brought it over here to talk about it. It is a Type 4 head. Let me bring you in a little bit closer, and let's talk about your valves. Okay, like I said, let's talk valves. What we're looking at here is actually an AMC head, but it's just like a Volkswagen head. I have two of the sets of springs and retainers off. What you're seeing here used to be here. I have a spring compressor. I'll tell you what, it works great on Type 1 heads. It works great on Type 1 1600 heads. You really got to finagle it to work on a 36 head, and you really kind of got to finagle it to work on a Type 4 head. I don't know if it's just my spring compressor or what. You can make it work. That's how I did this. It presses down. You move the two little retainers that are in the grooves of the valve here. There's little retainers that stick in here. That'll come off, that comes off, spring comes off, and then as you can see, your valves are loose. That's step one in our next process here. I'm going to backtrack real quick. Before you take those springs and retainers off, when you're doing an inspection in here, if you're going to reuse your heads, you want to look and make sure that you do not have valves sinking into the heads. You want to make sure that the seats are still supporting the valves, they're not getting beat in the heads, that you don't have any issues. You can also inspect the seats once you have these out. I have one valve here that seems like it's a little bit low, and that might have been part of the issue with this motor. But anyway, moving on, once you have those springs off, let's try this again. Once you have the springs and retainers off, you'll be able to remove your valve. And what you need to do, that lapping compound that we used on the cylinder earlier, to lap it into the head, you're going to want to lap your valves if you're going to reuse them. They get buildup on the seat and on the valve here. And if you put that lapping compound on that seat right there and get that valve in there, they make a little tool that you can put on the face of the valve. And what you're basically doing is this motion. You're rotating it just like you did that cylinder. You're lapping it in, cleaning up imperfections in the sealing surface. I watched a video a while back, and it taught a great trick that I'd never seen before. You all might be familiar with it. You all might hate it. You might love it. I don't know. if you find a piece of fuel line that'll slip over this valve, and then you could put the end of that fuel line into your battery powered drill, and then when it's time to lap, instead of rubbing like you're rubbing sticks together to make a fire, you put a little bit of pressure right out here on the face of the valve with your finger and run that drill, and it will spin it. And you can change directions on the drill also, forward, backward, clean up, relap. I believe it was Tim's workshop that I caught this tip on, and he did some amazing stuff getting down to like 0 leak down on these used heads he was working on. So when it comes time for me to work on these heads over here, I'm definitely going to use that trick to get my valves lapped in. All right, well at that point, we will have had our heads taken care of. We will have our pistons and cylinders refurbished. It'll be time to start putting it back together. And when you do that, of course, you need to get all sorts of new seals and gaskets for push rods and everything. We've got it all sitting there. I can't stress enough though, guys, clean. Clean, 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 clean. When you're doing a Band-Aid motor, give it a fighting chance and clean that thing up. Something I didn't address extensively in the beginning of the video, you really got to make sure your bottom end is prepared for this. Is it ready to keep on living, you know? Type 4 motors don't have near as much of an issue with their end play getting bad, with the case getting beat out. But that's something you need to check, you know? Is it even worth investing the time, money, all the effort into making this work? If you got a beat out case, it's not worth it. So inspect your bottom end. Make sure that it's ready to go for you. On a Type 4, you can also remove your lifters without splitting the case. You can't do that on a Type 1. But pull your lifters out. Make sure they go back where they belong. This particular motor is a hydraulic lifter motor, which they're notorious for the lifters wearing out prematurely. But check your lifters. You can visually inspect your cam. There's a lot of things you can do. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, when you do a lot of those things, more often than not, you're going to find a motor that's not worth a Band-Aid, that needs a full rebuild. This motor, I got lucky. It's a hydraulic lifter motor. Lifters are okay for what I'm doing. Cam's in okay shape. Bottom end is still pretty tight. I don't know the mileage. I don't know what bus this came out of, but it's going to go back in my bus here shortly, and hopefully it'll give us some worry-free miles after the effort we're putting in to make the top end a little bit better than it was when we took it out. Like I said, the bottom end, it's good enough. It's going to be great. Good enough is probably an understatement. It's pretty nice. We're going to make the top end, try to make it just as nice so that we can get some worry-free miles out of this thing and enjoy this bus while we're rebuilding the original motor. Well, everybody, that's about it on this motor refurb video. Like I said, it's not for everybody. It's not for every motor, that's for sure. But in this particular situation, we're going to refurb a motor and get it put back in this bus. Let me know if you want to see some more about this. You know, there's tons of videos out there on building motors. I don't know that you all watching me assemble a used motor is necessarily great content. But, I don't know, let me know. This is going back fuel injection. That might be of some interest to you all when I get the long block back together. How to get all the Type 410s back in place and get all the fuel injection set up. And this motor transmission installs into the vehicle as one. And then once it's in there, we got a lot of stuff to do, like new CV axle boots and I don't know, other stuff like that. Still got the gas tank to properly install and get the filler neck hooked up, all sorts of stuff like that. Anyway, let me know down below if this is something you're interested in seeing some more videos on. Otherwise, I'm going to continue to quietly work on it in the background and dedicate my time to the single cab that's sitting here behind us. There's one other thing I want to talk about too. In quite a few of my videos, I've mentioned the fact that I don't really come from a car family. But I failed to remember that when my mom remarried when I was 9 years old, I got an uncle that was a car guy, and he passed away a couple weeks ago. But he always was interested in what I was doing in the shop. Ever since I was 16 and got a car, he was a hot rod guy, but he was still always showed interest and supported me as a young man getting into the car hobby. And if I've learned nothing else from that, it's I'm one of the older guys now, and we need to support these younger guys that are getting into cars and keep the spirit of this hobby alive. It doesn't matter if it's Volkswagens or hot rods. We always show interest when they show interest and get the next generation of grease monkeys out there in their shops, in their driveways, under the tree, working on these cars to keep them alive. It's the American spirit. That's what we are. It's freedom. It's on the road. I don't think any other country experiences automobilia like we do. I think every other country, sorry to offend anybody, is imitating the United States and how we love automobilia. But anyway, for all the times I thought I didn't have a car person in my family, I did have a car person in my family, and I'm grateful for him. So this episode's dedicated to him. So again, everybody, thanks for being here. I really do appreciate you stopping in and checking out my videos. If you got a second, like and subscribe. There's going to be more content like this. And like I said, tell me what you want to see. But like, subscribe, comment, tell me your thoughts on this project. Tell me to get back on the single cab because we need to see more of that. Or tell me to get that single cab done and this one done because we've got a whole lot more to work on. Anyway, thank you again. I genuinely mean it. Thank you for being here, stopping in and taking the time to watch my video. I hope this was of some interest to you. Let's all together get out there in the shop and work on them. I know it's getting hot, folks. It's going to get cooler soon. But let's get out there and work on them. It's car show season. I'm getting ready to go to a show here in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to it. But that's all babbling. Thanks for being here. Thanks for stopping in. Thanks for coming back. Thanks to the new subscribers. I appreciate you all dedicating that little bit of time to see what I'm doing in my shop. Anyway, until next time.